Welcome in, everybody. This is Zach.
Dakota.
I'm Dylan.
And on today's episode, we've got a list as well as a bourbon review. This is episode 2 of the Barrels Blockbusters podcast. Nicholson, Tarantino, and Nolan. Today, we're going to be tasting David Nicholson Reserve, a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey at 100 proof, coming out of the Lux Row Distillery in Bardstown, Kentucky. And we'll be doing a top 5 Tarantino and Nolan list. How you guys doing today?
Pretty good. Excited to try this.
Hopefully, it's better than the Johnny Walker.
Yep. The nose is much better. Lots of brown sugar. A little bit of a peanut shell quality, I think. But let's go ahead and dive in. What do you guys get on the nose?
Definitely, it's like a dark fruit, toasted oak is what I get. Very, very caramel, sweet, very inviting.
Mm-hmm.
It's very oaky.
Yeah, it does smell like an oak stick. So I'm not sure the age statement of this. We know it's at least 4 years old because they use the word straight on the label. But outside of that, they don't provide an age statement. This is also not bottled in bond, despite it being 100 proof. I don't know you guys, but this guy's been sitting in the glass for a while, so I'm ready to go ahead and dive into the taste. Cheers.
Sure. Ooh. Good stuff.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Very smooth, sweet, rounded character, I think. Definitely get a lot of that caramel brown sugar. Not a lot of rice spice on this one. I don't think it's wheated. I think it's a rye bourbon. But I do know that they produce a wheated mash bill under this label.
Yeah, it's very I would say this one's very very bold, robust. It's like kind of like dark chocolate and cinnamon is what I'm getting off of it.
Yeah, that's good notes.
That's a nice blend. It's not too much rye like the last one.
Yeah.
Just like punched you in the face. Yeah, it's much better.
Okay, I'm glad I could get one of you, 1 out of 2 on the bottles for you guys. It's my first time ever having this. I've actually had very limited Lux Row products in the past. This is my first budget bottle from them. Everything else I've had from them has been a limited release, such as the Blood Oath series, Pack 9 specifically, or some of their distillery exclusive offerings. So I'm actually fairly impressed. Yesterday, when I gave it a pre-taste, I thought I liked it less than Johnny Walker, but I'm definitely changing that tune.
Yeah, so I guess what do you guys think about the finish on it?
I think it's relatively mild. There's a little bit of spice, but it doesn't linger in like a hot way on your palate. It's not like a cinnamon red hot candy or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's there's a little bit of a Kentucky hug, a little bit of warming in the throat and the chest. But surprisingly, for 100 proof, I would say it definitely drinks below that. I think it drinks closer to like 95 proof, maybe even 92. What are you getting?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I'm on the. It's a long and satisfying finish. I don't know. Kind of like sweet spice, oaky. Kind of like a. I guess the best way to describe it, like kind of like campfire embers, but in a positive way, on a positive note, not like a very peaty,
Yeah.
but just more of like a campfire style smoke.
What about you, Cody? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, same. Honestly, it's really good. It doesn't overstay its welcome with the spice. I like it. I like it a lot. It's very oaky. I definitely taste the whole campfire.
So I guess
Yeah,
Zach, next question. So how much of it does a bottle of this go for?
this was on sale from the ABC. I think it was also $31.99. It's the same price as Johnny Walker.
Oh, 10 times better.
Yeah, this is a great entry in my opinion.
Yep.
This is I would
This
definitely give
is-
someone this as an entry level whiskey to get started with.
Yeah, I think this one was $5 off on sale. So that normally it's $36.99. But for $32 plus tax out the door. I think it's pretty phenomenal actually.
I really like it.
Yeah. You know, honestly, too, this would be almost one of those ones. I could go either way, drinking it neat or drinking it on the rocks. I think if I put it on the rocks, I definitely think you get more of the vanilla and sweeter flavors out of it.
Yeah, you would. That's a good note. I think I think on my scale, I think I'm like a 6.5 out of 10. You guys probably maybe feel a little differently, but what are you guys giving it?
This is definitely a solid 6 for me.
6.
Yeah, about the same. Honestly, it's really, really good. I like it.
Yeah, I mean to summarize from our rating scale, which is in our description on our channel and other places, but a 6 on our scale is something that's very good. It's above average. It's really enjoyable. Um, so don't think of it in terms of like American school grading system. This isn't getting a D. This is getting a 6 out of 10. And so this is above average. This is a very good product.
This would something I would definitely reach for at a bar if I saw, especially like if I just kind of wanted to warm the palate up. This I had brought a friend who was kind of new to whiskey. I'd be like, yeah, definitely, try out the David Nicholson. I think it'd go pretty well, and that way it gives a good baseline to where to jump off from. If they need it less intense or more intense.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, you also think about like per pour cost. If you buy this bottle for yourself, I mean, you're looking at essentially 20. There's 25 ounces in a bottle. So if you pour up 2 ounces at a time, that's 12 pours roughly. So you're looking at something that's less than $3
$3.
a pour.
Yeah.
So I mean that's
It's not bad.
yeah.
Not bad at all.
All right. We'll move on to our top 5 Nolan list. We've allowed each of us to offer up one honorable mention if we so choose. But otherwise, it was kind of a hard decision for some of us. I think I kind of struggled with the back end of my list, but the top I was pretty firm and decided on. Cody, do you want to kick us off with your Nolan?
Yeah, it's gonna be rough. I can already tell because it's just one I kind of went back and forth with. I had it planned out before we started, and then I kept looking over, and I was like, no, that doesn't go there. I just kept kind of going back and forth. Uh, I'm gonna say my honorable mention. Um, I'm gonna do The Dark Knight Rises. That's my honorable mention. Uh, for a while, this was probably in like my top 3 favorite Nolan movies before he started coming out with other films. But it was one of the best theater experiences I ever had. I went back when midnight releases was a normal thing, and it was a really cool experience to see it like a packed house on a Friday night at midnight. And I just think even though I think it's too long at times, I do think that the characters are good in it, and for a long time I had it up there with The Dark Knight as kind of going back and forth on which one I preferred. But I'm going to do that as my honorable mention, and I guess we're going to segue into 5.
I don't know.
You
Dylan, did you have an honorable mention as well? We'll just go around.
I didn't necessarily have an honorable mention. I called them nice tries.
Okay.
And how I describe the nice try, it's everybody loves it, but I didn't find it particularly like innovative or that great. And so my nice try would have been Oppenheimer, of course. And I really do not like that movie, but nice try. So
Yeah, I think that one's definitely coming up on my list. To match you, Cody, my honorable mention for Nolan was The Dark Knight Rises. It didn't have the same sort of impact on me as some of his other films that I've released. I think a lot of them come out at kind of a pivotal time in like I guess my movie fandom. Um, but the Dark Knight trilogy as a whole is excellent. I left Batman Begins off of this list, but honestly, I think it probably deserves a spot on the list. I've only personally seen 8 Nolan films myself, so I was kind of to squeeze it down to 5. I had to cut Batman Begins out, but it probably would have been my second honorable mention if we had that option. But yeah, The Dark Knight Rises, I think, put a good end to the trilogy, to the series. I don't think it definitely didn't have quite the impact on me as The Dark Knight did, and you'll see where that ends up on my list when we get to it. But still, overall, a great film. So you're going to number 5, Cody?
Yeah, my number 5 actually is Batman Begins. I thought about it for a while, and when I first saw this movie in theaters, of course, I was like 10 or 11 when it came out back in 2005. I wasn't the biggest fan of it, and then when I rewatched it, to me personally, I think as far as like superhero movies go, it's the best like origin story for a character. When it comes to Batman as a whole, I think it's a very good movie. I do have problems with it. It's not perfect. The third act is a little iffy. I think Cillian Murphy's portrayal of Scarecrow was good, but he's not in the movie enough to really justify him as a villain, even though I know Ra's al Ghul was actually the main villain in it. Uh, but I love all the characters in it. I love the whole story of him being brought up and just everything that typical Batman, story, but it's just done so well. And I love the whole Gotham look of it. I just think that overall, it's the best origin story we've had for a superhero. And it's funny because it first time I saw it, I just didn't care for it much. I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
And I just have even though I wasn't born then, I have a connection with the '89 Batman. Like Michael Keaton is my favorite Batman. So it was kind of difficult to, I guess, see a new portrayal of the character. But I think Christian Bale,
Yeah.
not Christopher, both Chris's, did a fantastic job, and he's one of my favorite actors ever. So yeah, Batman Begins is my number 5.
Yeah, I think that obviously this Batman trilogy, I think, benefited from coming out pre MCU.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think
definitely.
it was more fresh then, and so like rehashing an origin story such as Batman's at this point would be really tired and overdone. But then it was a new, fresh take on it. So yeah. What about you, Dylan?
You're talking about as far as like my number 5
Yeah.
Nolan film.
Mhm.
I'd give it Kill Bill Volume 1 on this.
That's
Yeah.
Tarantino.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Not not Nolan. Sorry. I only listed 4 for
Okay.
Nolan because I'd only seen 4.
Yeah.
So
We'll wait till 4 then to get to you. My number 5 film for Nolan was Memento.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was just really unique and different when I watched it for the first time. Not when it released, obviously, this is many years after that. But I've always really liked those time trippy movies.
Yeah.
And this one, had like a little bit of a mystery as well to it. So you kind of see how and I think you'll see that trend follow in my list that I kind of gravitate towards those types of stories. But I do appreciate that you didn't really know the full story until you'd watched the whole movie, and then it finally all the pieces fit together, and then you saw the big picture at the end. And so that's why I kind of nudged Batman Begins out of my list because I wanted to put this in my top 5. Um, keep it simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a damn good movie. I love, like you were saying, I love films that kind of you're kept in the dark till the very end of it. It kind of gives you just a little enough like breadcrumbs just to kind of follow the story, and then by the end of it, it's got this big like not Shyamalan twist, but something that's very unique and movies like that. And I felt like the Butterfly Effect was another one that did that really well.
Yeah. All right, what about your number 4?
Oh goodness, my number 4. Let's see. Number 4 is The Prestige.
Okay.
Which you haven't seen yet,
No.
but it's definitely worth watching. It's a great movie all around. It's one that I saw later as far as Nolan movies go. I saw it at a later time than obviously when it came out, but I love Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale in it. It has a very good story. I like the location of it, where it takes place, the time it takes place at, and it's just all around just a great film. To me, it's not really a film that I've seen that's been replicated a lot. I mean, I know you got like the Now You See Me, and there was another one called The Illusionist with Edward Norton and Paul Giamatti, which was also very good. I think it came out the same year, but it's one of my favorite Nolan films easily. I think you should definitely watch it when you get time because it's one of his best.
Yeah, it's something I've been wanting to do for a few years now. I think I actually came as close to starting it once on Netflix. I believe it was there, but just never actually sat down and watched it. But I think it was certainly something I might consider for this type of list based off of what I've heard from other people. I think the magician or the magic aspect would be fun and different. You don't really get that often in theaters. So
Yeah, it's really good. The twist in it's very unique too, kind of like Memento. It's one you really don't see coming. I kind of like how it keeps it under wraps the whole time, and it does a good job of fooling you with it. You're kind of along for the whole trickery, so it's definitely a great film to check out.
all right, Dylan.
Yeah,
Number
so for
4.
my number 4, I have Following by Nolan. I just I don't know, I just really liked it. It was filmed in black and white, kind of gritty, non-linear story, kind of like Memento. Um, very captivating. Honestly, I just the character development within just a little over an hour was very robust in my opinion. Unique plot line in terms of like following the writer. She becomes engaged with the criminal underworld. So yeah.
That's the one I still need to see. I
Yeah.
hadn't seen it yet. That and Tenet's the two I hadn't seen, so
I haven't seen it either.
it's on my list to check out.
All right, my number 4 is going to be his most recent work with Oppenheimer. I've always kind of been fascinated with that era in history, American history, world history, you name it. I think getting sort of an inside look at the character of Oppenheimer and some of the work that was going on in that community at that time and the secrecy and all the things at play. And I like that Oppenheimer looked at it not to talk about necessarily just the atomic bomb being created, but to talk about Oppenheimer, the person, and kind of show his life story leading up to that moment. And we got a taste of it a little bit after that moment. And Robert Downey Jr. I think did an excellent job in his role in that film, which I can't remember his character's name, but I think just also getting to experience like the Red Scare and the communist hunting and all of the, I guess misinformation and like how the politics of that whole situation worked, and kind of seeing it and kind of getting a glimpse. I don't know that you saw it, but you got a glimpse at like the underworkings of that entire process. I think that was just really interesting to me. And then also saw it in the 70 millimeter IMAX format. So that was an impressive just cinematography and all the shots and the special effects that they used in creation of that film. Um, yeah, it was pretty awe inspiring to see it in that format.
Yeah, I hate that I didn't get to check it out. I wanted to see it in the 70 millimeter and never got a chance to. But it's a film that I liked a lot. I don't know if it has a lot of rewatchable value to it. I mean, I know it's a long film; it's like 3 hours, but the whole story is fascinating. The acting is the best acting I've ever seen Robert Downey Jr. do in any movie. Like he's brilliant in it.
All right, take us to number 3, Cody.
Number 3 is Memento.
Okay.
I hadn't seen this film in a long time, but I love it. It's I like kind of like what Dylan was saying. I like the about falling. I like the grittiness of Memento a lot. I like the look of it. It's very different. It's unique. The ending is insane and probably one of the best endings to any movie. Guy Pearce is great in it. I just think it's kind of stands on its own. You know, it's one of those films that you can put in the category of other certain unique movies like Fight Club and stuff like that, where it's just kind of by itself, and there hasn't really been a movie that's been like it since. There's been a lot of movies that have had the same concept, like we kind of mentioned with Butterfly Effect, and ones that are like really out there, but in terms of like storytelling and characters and writing, I think it's one of Nolan's best movies like ever. So it's easily in my top 3 for sure.
All right, Dylan, 3.
Yeah, so for my number 3, I have Interstellar. Um, I think what I like most about this is essentially just Hans Zimmer. He's definitely one of my favorite composers. Pirates of the Caribbean used to be my favorite um, soundtrack for a movie, but Interstellar is definitely my favorite now. And I think as far as like the stunning visuals, and then how they explain like the scientific concepts, the slow build up within it as well, into the plot, I appreciate. Um, at first, not gonna lie, the whole father daughter love concept, I was like, oh, it's gonna be a cliche story, but um, it turned out really good. It's a really good science fiction movie that's done properly, and it bodes well to like in terms of like just like science, just in general. So
That's one I really need to revisit. I liked it the first time I saw it, and I've actually only seen it once from what I remember. It's it being 10 years this year. I definitely need to revisit. But the soundtrack, the song "Stay" by Hans Zimmer off that one is phenomenal.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
great score. Yeah, it's emotional too.
yeah, it is.
All right, my number 3 is going to be Inception, um, which may be lower than some might expect, but that has a lot to do with the fact that I haven't rewatched it in a very long time. I guess similar to what you may be with Interstellar, Cody, but I really haven't watched it probably since it got put on Blu-ray.
Oh wow!
So,
Like 2011.
Yeah,
Something
so
like that.
I think obviously the visual effects, the story, the acting, the characters, everything about it was just, I mean, some of the best that you've ever seen in a movie. But since I haven't been able to revisit it in a long time, I think it kind of gotten cloudy in my memory. So I know that I do really enjoy it, but I have a stronger emotional connection to 2 other films from his catalog. So just to keep it short, that's why it's my number 3. What's your number 2, Cody?
My number 2 is The Dark Knight. I think it's pretty much safe to say it's one of the greatest superhero movies of all time, if you will call it that. I mean, it's more crime drama heavy, which I very much appreciate. I do think that there is some elements to the new one that Matt Reeves did that is better than The Dark Knight at times, especially the look of it, the detective side of it. But overall, this was one of my favorite films when I saw it in 2008. It's still one of my favorite movies. Uh, anytime I think of like best DC film, best Marvel film, this and Logan are like top tier for me. Like it doesn't really get much better. I love the cast. Heath Ledger was phenomenal in it, and yeah, it's just I really can't say much else about it that hasn't already been said. I mean, it's held as one of the greatest superhero crime drama movies ever, and it's awesome. It's a great movie, and the Hans Zimmer score in it's phenomenal as well. One of my favorites.
All right, Dylan. 2.
So for number 2, I have Memento. We're all falling close with each other on this, but I think the biggest thing I enjoy about it is vulnerability within the character and just his search for identity throughout the whole thing. It's very raw emotionally. You can almost relate to him and told like essentially from his point of view, like that's as closest to a character I've ever felt. And then how they do the two scenes in chronological and reverse chronological order, especially with the color contrast of black and white and colors. I don't know. It just adds like a noir style, and it's gritty. It's just very raw, very emotional. And so it's just like I will admit it was very confusing the first time I watched it. I watched it 4 times, and still feel like I don't understand it. But yeah.
All right, my number 2 is going to be Interstellar. So I just go agree with everything you guys have said about it so far. I think I've always had a soft spot for sci-fi, especially space related sci-fi stories, and I think this just hit all of my wants for a sci-fi based film. Exploring and explaining some of the scientific things that work there, and in a Hollywood format. Obviously, they made some adjustments for the sake of telling the story, so it's not perfectly scientific, and no one should criticize the movie for doing that. I don't think. I think it got a little overhanded at the time. People were like, refuting the physics at play. I'm like, okay, well, it's just a movie, guys. Like, let's slow down. But yeah, Matthew McConaughey, the emotional journey his character goes through, trying to essentially save the world for his daughter, and how it kind of comes back onto itself again. Like, as I said at the get go, any kind of movie that plays with time, either in its portrayal or its actual flow, is always like just like, oh yeah, sci-fi. I love that part. So that's my number 2. All right, Cody, what's the top of your list?
My number 1 is Inception. That's always been my favorite Nolan movie since it came out, and I think it's going to stay there. It's going to take something really, really fantastic to top that. And I mean, Dark Knight, I kind of sometimes swap them back and forth between 1 and 2, but it's my favorite Nolan film. I think that the Hans Zimmer score is one of my favorites. It probably is my favorite, honestly, from all the ones he's done. It's the song Time at the end of it is amazing. It's an emotional journey. You're very invested in it. And by the end of it, it's kind of like Interstellar. It really grips you with emotion. And it's also one that's kind of hard to kind of hard to understand, I should say, at first, but you kind of follow along with it. And it's one I hadn't seen in a long time, but anytime I revisit it, I really have no complaints with it. I love the cast in it. Leonardo DiCaprio is amazing in it. and just it's so interesting to me, like just the whole concept of dreams and what happens when we fall asleep, and it's a unique look at it and a unique take, and it's the most fascinating Nolan film in my opinion. It's the most unique out of his filmography. So yeah, Inception's my favorite. It's one I never get tired of. I could easily watch this and The Dark Knight any day of the week, and just be fully invested in the story and the characters. So it's my number one.
All right, Dylan.
Yeah, so I also have Inception as my number one. It's really more about, I guess, the visuals, the graphics, specifically talking about the zero gravity fight that they have. I just thought that was so cool. As where in Memento, you just had essentially just like one character arc. Inception, multiple character arcs developed, and they're fully developed at that. And then the whole concept of shared dreaming, stepping through the dreams. Mind blowing at the time when it came out. Still mind blowing. Um, yeah, everything that, and plus what Cody said as well.
All right, and my number one is The Dark Knight. It was the movie that made me interested in movies, and it was, I guess, something I recognized when it came out. I actually didn't see it in theaters. I think the first time I saw it was when I bought the Blu-ray for it. Um, so yeah, like seeing that at 14, 15 years old at the time, before I really cared much about, I guess, quality movies, and just sort of, just whatever ad campaign happened to grab my attention was all I cared about at the time, movie wise. So that this was what kind of opened my eyes, and it was like pre, super information age, or whatever you want to call it, whatever today is. Like, like I didn't have to like have someone tell me it was good. It was something that I could recognize on my own, and like it was before, you know, internet forums like Reddit or YouTube were even really that big or popular. So I think just for me to like at that age independently recognize and appreciate the acting, the story, the characters, the development, the payoff that was set up from Begins that you get with the Dark Knight, and the evolution, and obviously Heath Ledger as the Joker going down to some of the best acting performance in history, and the tragic story associated with his performance in that movie. So yeah, it's always held a special place in my heart. It'll probably always be my number one Nolan film. It's also very high in my personal film list, regardless of director. Um, so while the other movies might be more technically challenging and quote better, for most people, I just have a personal attachment to this one, so that's why it's my number one. And then we'll swap over to Tarantino, and I'll kick us off here. My honorable mention is going to be Kill Bill Volume 2. Um, really love this franchise. I really love the characters here, the story, how it goes, and I do think you do get a good ending here. A lot of movies struggle to carry uh, stories through each iteration of the movie, and I think you got a satisfying end with Kill Bill Volume 2. And you were allowed enough time to develop an interest and care about the characters involved, and they had nuance. They weren't one-sided. Obviously, the homage to the old martial arts films too, and I think the action scenes were filmed amazingly. Um, the special effects in those scenes and the stunts done by the stunt people. Just over. I mean, it's just some of the best action you'll ever get in the film. All right, Cody.
My honorable mention is also Kill Bill Volume 2. I think it's pretty much everything you said. It's a great continuation of the first one. The ending is wrapped up nicely, in my opinion. It has some of the best action scenes ever. Um, it's just all around a great film. I think it's kind of cool that they had a really badass female lead, which you really didn't see much of back then, and I thought that was really neat. And his inspiration from like old school, like Seven Samurai stuff like that he had. Um, you can tell that he took inspiration from all those older Japan films, and I think overall it's just a great sequel. It's probably one of his best films easily. It just barely misses the top five for me.
All right, Dylan.
All right, so for the nice try, I have here is Pulp Fiction. I was not a fan of this
Damn.
movie. Huh?
Yeah, keep
I
going.
Yeah, I definitely was not a fan of this movie. I felt like it was overdone. I know it has a cult following. I don't know. Just couldn't get into it. It's probably like the worst Quentin Tarantino film I've seen, but Quentin Tarantino is my favorite director. So it's yep, that's mine. I won't say anything about it because I'm going to be burned at the stake for this opinion. So
I don't know. You never know. Could be
Yeah.
a surprise in there somewhere.
Yeah. All right. My number 5 Tarantino film is going to be Reservoir Dogs. This is a movie I haven't seen in a long time, probably going on, 11, 12 years at this point. I haven't rewatched it in a long time. I do remember enjoying it. Again, Tarantino also does this, similar to Nolan, plays with the timelines, less in a sci-fi manner and more just the way that it's portrayed and intermixing different perspectives and storylines. I think this was his first time doing that I'm aware of. I haven't seen Jackie Brown, so I can't tell if anything um, funky happens there time wise. But any sort of like gang or crime drama, I also am a sucker for. It's probably my favorite genre outside of sci-fi. So Harvey Keitel and Tarantino himself and others acting in this film were great. Each of the characters had a unique, identifiable personality, had flaws. Um, yeah, it was a great film.
My number 5 is also Reservoir Dogs. It's a film I hadn't seen in a really long time, and it was his directorial debut. And to be his directorial debut, I think he did a fantastic job with it. The casting, like Zach said, is great. Tim Roth and Michael Madsen and that whole cast is brilliant. And Steve Buscemi as well. It's a very intense movie. The last like 20, 30 minutes is insane. It's just, white knuckle, just intensity. The whole scene with Stuck in the Middle with You is forever scarred into my brain with the whole ear and all that fun stuff with the cop. It's very intense and very memorable. And it takes place in like one location, which I think is pretty awesome because in a lot of films, you do the one location, it could be either very interesting or extremely boring. And I think he does a good job of, like Zach said, the time jump between, middle and start and just back and forth. It keeps it refreshing and it's never boring. And it's a great Tarantino movie, in my opinion.
yeah, so I guess as far as my number 5, I have Inglourious Bastards. Um, what I really like about the this movie in particular is like Brad Pitt and Christoph Waltz. Just the the development between the two characters as far as like the villain versus the I guess the hero. Also like the dark comedy as well, and not to mention the opening scene at the dairy farm. Is it very much a shock factor, but in my opinion, this is probably one of Brad Pitt's best performances in a movie, especially as he's progressed in his career. Yep, that's what I have.
I'm just thinking of the southern accent.
That was wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely kind of hits at home. Like, just I guess, yeah, hits close to home as well.
Yeah.
Well, his southern accent, I should say. Let me clarify the southern accent. Yeah.
All right. My number 4 is going to be Kill Bill Volume 1. Another movie that just had a ton of impact on me when I saw it for the first time. I jumped down a rabbit hole of old martial arts films, of old samurai films, and being obsessed with, feudal Japan and Japanese culture, and also the anime scene or the anime scenes in general, and explaining the backstory of what's her name? Character, the actress.
Uma Thurman.
No.
Or which one?
The half Japanese, half American, or half whatever. I can she's Chinese.
Lucy Liu.
Yeah, Lucy Liu. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, her explaining her backstory through the lens of the anime style was like, when I first saw it, I was like, whoa, what is this? Mixing animation with live action. That was, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's been done before, but for me at the time, that was the first time I've ever seen it, and it was executed so well. And again, action scene is probably, one of the best action scenes in the bar fight, with the flail wielding, young school age Japanese girl, and fighting off against Uma Thurman and the entire gang of the Crazy Eights. Yeah, I mean, this kicked off a whole obsession for me. So that's easily my number 4.
My number 4 is also Kill Bill Volume 1. Ironically, pretty much everything you said. It kind of put me down a rabbit hole as well with a lot of old school like samurai films and just a lot of stuff that it just opened my mind to newer genres of film. Especially because back then I didn't care about like subtitles. If I had to read something, I didn't want to, didn't want to sit through it. So it kind of put me in a mood to watch those older ones. And there's been a lot of films I've seen since then that are Korean films, Japanese films, and a lot of things can go to this movie because I don't think I would have been as interested in it if I hadn't saw Volume 1. But everything about this movie is great. I love the ending fight scene. The soundtrack's great. The love that. Fantastic. But yeah, I mean, it's a gore-filled, just awesome, badass movie. I love it. One of my favorites.
Yeah. So I guess my number 4 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Um, really like their throwback to like history, especially with like the Manson murders, but also the development of the plot line that runs adjacent to it as well, and kind of how like they intermingle the two. I guess there's going to be a theme with Quentin Tarantino, but it's just the dark undertones and the humor typically what draw me in. So, and then Margot Robbie's performance in this was impeccable in my opinion. Um, yep, awesome.
Yeah, the ending's hilarious.
Yeah, it is 100%. Yeah, definitely. And just like, yeah, just to think that, correct me if I'm wrong, my memory, but it's Beverly Hills, right? It's like where they
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, definitely. It's just kind of funny just to kind of see like they're like, like supposed to be these Hollywood stars, but they're like down to earth and relatable. So
I love it.
All right, my number 3 is going to be Inglorious Bastards. I think this at this stage, Tarantino kind of made a name for himself. Was able to bring in Christoph Waltz and Brad Pitt. Everything that Dylan said. The humor involved in this film makes you just laugh out loud. It's still got all the action and the punch and the darkness, especially given the setting and the things at stake and at play here in the movie. Um, but just seeing the personality, each personality of each of the soldiers involved and the villains, sort of like fully fleshed out, fully rounded out, and fully on display. And I think also, opening scene, as Dylan said, so much tension, perfectly introducing the villain right out of the gate. So, yeah.
So my number 3 is Pulp Fiction. Um, for a while, it was my favorite, and I thought about more. I don't know. It's a great film. I think. Don't get me wrong. It wouldn't be top 3 if it wasn't. I think it's got some great scenes in it. I quote it a lot. It's got a lot of great characters. John Travolta and Samuel Jackson's phenomenal in it, and it's got one of the best intros. I know it's kind of been a common theme with this. It's like his intros for his movies and certain scenes, but he's so good at like setting a mood every time he does a movie, just with an opening shot or opening dialogue or just whatever. Uh, the cast is all around great. It's got some awesome action to it. It also has some hilarious dark humor, especially the pawn shop scene, which is hysterical. But there's not a whole lot to be said about it that hasn't already been said. I think it's a great film. I don't think it's his best movie personally, but it's definitely obviously in my top 3, and it's gonna stay that way. So yeah, Pulp Fiction's my number 3.
So my number 3 is Kill Bill Volume 1. I think y'all talked about it enough. It's really just like the martial arts, the fight scenes. It yeah. So yeah, we've said enough. So we can move on to the number 2.
All right. My number 2 is going to be Django Unchained. I think this is the full evolution of Tarantino. Jamie Foxx, Leonardo DiCaprio, Samuel Jackson,
Christoph Waltz
again. He definitely keeps the cast of characters around, and they follow him for good reason because he typically knocks it out of the park. But again, I think same things I said about Inglourious Basterds. Opening scene sets the stage, sets the mood, sets the tone, creates that world for you, continues to flesh out that world throughout the movie, adding layers to each of the characters, high stakes, tension, great action scenes, phenomenal ending. I can see a lot of people arguing for this being his best work, but I have an emotional connection to a different film. But similar to Nolan, I could see on technical aspects that a lot of people would argue that this is his best work.
My number 2 is Inglourious Basterds. Pretty much everything that you and Dylan have said so far is how I feel about this movie. I think the acting is brilliant in it. I love the opening scene. I love the theater scene. I thought that Eli Roth was good in it as Bear Jew. Brad Pitt is great in it. Christoph Waltz is amazing. Michael Fassbender's brilliant in it as well. He's not really in it, that long, but he's great in it. It's one of my favorites. I just love the whole time period of it and just the look of the film, and it might be my favorite opening to a Tarantino movie. Honestly, it's just so tense. Like that whole scene is just very intense. But yeah, there's really nothing else I have to say about it. I don't want to ramble on too long. I agree with everything that you guys did. It's brilliant.
Yeah, so my number 2 is The Hateful Eight. This was the first time I've seen cinematography and it's like actually look the person up. Robert Richardson did a great job here. The setting of stuck in a stagecoach in a blizzard, and then just the commentary, like they create like a microcosm of, all these societal issues that are going on and they just build off of it. And yeah, I just enjoy just how raw It is. You spoke earlier to where this to me, this is Quentin Tarantino turn. 2015. This is like, huh? It's just literally what I said when I watched this movie. I just said, huh? That's something. Yeah. Without spoiling it for everyone, it's just go watch it. Look up Robert Richardson. He's in a lot more movies than you realize. So
That's a good pick.
All right. My number one is going to be Pulp Fiction. If Dark Knight was the movie that made me interested in movies, then Pulp Fiction was the one that fully unlocked my nerdiness towards them. The dialogue in here, again, has always stuck with me. The dark humor, the witty back and forth between the characters being unique, being identifiable, and the way he crafted a world, and then also executed another non sequential timeline. I guess I'm struggling with the correct terminology there, but playing with that again and offering different perspectives and introducing new storylines. You're like, I don't know why the heck we're learning about this guy, but then a few scenes later they tie it all back together and everything's connected and interwoven, and it's this small little world that he's created in a short time, full of fascinating characters. Yeah, it had such a lasting impact on me. I mean, it'll similar to Dark Knight. It'll always be on my top list, regardless of director.
And my number one is Django Unchained. I love this movie, and that's coming from someone that really doesn't care for westerns much at all. I never could get into them. My dad tried to get me into them, and I never did like them. Besides, like Eastwood and a couple of the Sam Peckinpah movies, I could never get into them much. But this movie was fantastic. I loved it when I saw it in theaters. I still love it. It's about 2 hours and 45 minutes, and I never felt that with this movie. It just kind of breezes by. Jamie Foxx is great in it. Christoph Waltz is great once again. Leonardo DiCaprio, it's one of his best roles. A lot of commitment as well. If you look behind the scenes of what happened in a certain scene in that movie, he went through hell in some of the scenes, and he did a fantastic job. The soundtrack is great. One of my favorites, and it's just a nice callback to like spaghetti westerns, and it almost has like a Mel Brooks humor at times in that dark, twisted Tarantino way. The whole scene with the bags on their heads with Don Johnson and Jonah Hill is hysterical. It kills me every time I watch it. It's just that's just peak Tarantino humor to me, and it has a lot of Mel Brooks sprinkled in as well. But the shootout at the end's amazing. But also the not only the score but the soundtrack, like Rick Ross and a bunch of other artists, is really good, and it just fits the whole tone of the film. So Django Unchained is easily my favorite Tarantino movie.
yep. So for my number one, I also have Django Unchained. I think Broomhilda, Calvin Candy, and I mean, it's just the whole. Well, everyone within this. Like I described the Grateful Eight, it's way more raw in my opinion than the Hateful Eight is. Uh, Very gritty, very good character development, and one specific moment towards the end. Even though Broomhilda doesn't have a lot of screen time, it's probably the most powerful character representation I've seen, and emotional connection, and especially towards the end when the reunion. Um, Yeah, left me in tears. And it was the first time it was very mind-opening as well too, I could say. Because a lot of times history is extremely gentrified, and this one you kind of like get to see it like for what it was.
I guess that'll do it for our Tarantino and Christopher Nolan list.
Yeah.
So all good picks, great picks.
Yeah, there's really not a bad movie that we mentioned. I mean,
There's not. Even the ones that didn't make the list, I still
Except
feel like
Oppenheimer, right?
that barely missed mine. I don't even know where I put Interstellar at, but it's on there somewhere. I need to rewatch it.
Interstellar was your third.
No, not mine. No,
No, it was on third.
it wasn't in my top
Oh, that's
five.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's on third.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was like 6, just because I hadn't seen it in forever. But
I mean, they're all at least 8 out of 10.
oh,
Every single one of
Django is like,
them. I think it was probably 10.
yeah, Django Inception's 10 for
Yeah.
sure.
Cody, we both
Yeah.
had the same number ones. You know that? Django and Inception.
Yeah, I know. I noticed that.
So
Yeah, Cody and I were tit for tat until third. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
well,
But yeah,
Awesome.
that was it's a good list.
Yeah, it was.
well, thanks everyone.
Yeah.
Enjoy your time.
Thank you so much for listening to Barrels and Blockbusters episode 2.
Yeah.
I'm Dakota.
I'm Zach.
I'm Dylan.
Talk to you all later.
Bye.